Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. I've got Kelvin Lewin here, and this is our second episode. Last one, we did a lot of cool stuff about AI and Buddhist cosmology, and we'll probably just go right back into it. Welcome to the show again.
Hey, Stuart. I think even half of a square is still a good one, right?
Yeah. So we were chatting a little bit. I mean, the AI stuff is really interesting. We can start there, or we can go into the Buddhist cosmology. I don't think there are many other people approaching AI from this perspective. Actually, do you know of anyone else who is approaching AI with different spiritual frameworks rather than the sort of materialist framework most applied inside of Silicon Valley?
Probably not, because most people don't have the time or the resources.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it comes down to. Because I was thinking about it since we're talking about it. It's like you really need to be a polymath kind of
Yeah.
thing in order to really grok what's all going on. So most people tend to specialize in one field or another. And even me, right, comparing myself to all my secular friends, all the retired people from NVIDIA and stuff like that, right? It's only because I wasted my time in academia and stuff like that that I had all this time and resources, right? No kids. So yeah, I think generally most people haven't done it. I think I have seen people who are in computer science, things like that, who are in AI who done it. There is actually a professor I should give a shout out to, Kurt Koitzer. Um, he's sort of a personal friend. He wasn't my advisor, but we were in the same department. He's in the Bayer Berkeley AI program now. He's supposed to be retired, but he's more busy than ever. But as part of his hobby, since I think 17 or 18, in his undergrad, he did Buddhist studies, especially Tibetan translations. He's well versed in Hinduism. He has a FAQ on Kundalini that based on his experience and everything that a lot of people actually visited when they have sudden Kundalini experiences.
Mm.
So and we were the two unique one in all of Berkeley. So yeah, I would think there's not that many. And even he may not have thought about all of this implication and timing as much as I have. But yeah, he would be the only one that I can think of in my network.
I think you actually sent me that FAQ. I remember something like that. I've also thought, as we were talking, like Shinzen Young, who is also a sort of
Yeah.
popular among the Bay Area spiritual side. He has now come out
Mm.
of retirement and
Oh.
joined a biology startup, tech biology startup. So the singularity is getting 80 years old. The singularity is heating up. So he wants to go out of the
Mm.
Enlightenment back into the world, kind of stuff.
I think it's a little bit too late for those
What do you
kind of
mean?
like AI and the technology and where it's going. If you're not in the field and if you're not
Yeah.
really doing it on the grounds, I think you can come back in and be dangerous enough.
Yeah.
And then I think he lost a lot of credibility with me with when he was talking. There was one podcast episode about total cessation, Shenzhen Yang
Mm.
cessation. What is his name? Something Armstrong? I forget. There was one guy that was a teacher, and he said he was a fully enlightened arhat, no desires and stuff like that. And I don't know if you uh, know about him. I'm blanking on
No.
his name. But anyway, Shenzhen Yang was on that podcast talking about it. And there was actually MRI studies trying to do brain scans to see if he really did stop breathing or not.
Oh,
Scientifically, it was confirmed that he didn't, even though he was using the Muse device that seems to imply he did. Experientially, he thought he
oh,
did. Total cessation. And then a lot of these things don't stand up to the scrutiny of modern instruments. So then Shenzhen Yang was going all about it. So he was like, a lot of people got turned off by his over enthusiasm and
for
everything. And
materialism, basically, for the trying to quantify enlightenment.
yeah, and this is it's a very specific state because it's total cessation. That's
Mm.
only very advanced practitioner of both Vipassana and Samatha can enter. Just one is not even enough. Anyway, so the irony is this guy now have come out saying, oh, it turns out I wasn't enlightened. And or he's disavow all those. He's like, I still like women. I want to get married and have children. Which is like one of the one of the sort of basic requirements for the third stage and fourth stage that you kind of get over your sexuality and sensuality.
Mm.
There's a Dhamma outward ground and people like oh man, I'm blanking on everybody's names. But there are other people who claim that the East people didn't get it right. It's just the monks being impotent, and it's not really like so. There plenty of people claiming that. So when he was claiming it and going through
Right.
all the like I was a little bit skeptical, and there's still people who think highly of it. But for me, you can't do a cultural appropriation of others and say the ancients, I take their technique and I take their wisdom, but they were wrong about the basic thing about like sexuality and sensuality. And then I can do these states, but then turns out no, I was wrong, and then grow long hair and then become like hippie kind of, I don't know. Anyways, so for me, I kind of put Shenzhen Yang and people in those things. They're not serious players.
This gets into really interesting territory, far away from where we started about. But the Tang dynasty, I've been going on my little deep dives into rabbit
Mm,
holes on a question I've always been interested in for since I think we talked about it last time, or on our private conversations, where the first sort of coach that I had, where I realized I was in a problem state. And I went and found a coach who really, a Western guy who had studied a lot of the history about Buddhism. And
yeah.
he, on our like second session, he ends the call with like, and then in 2006 I attained enlightenment, and I was like, oh man, how do I? And then following up that a few sessions later, he starts to charge me more money, or start to ask for more money. And I'm just like, how do I verify this? Like, because before that I was a secular, like there's no, it doesn't exist. It's a myth. I love the spiritual stuff, but it's all a narrative in our head. And so it got me onto this long path of how do I evaluate claims to enlightenment. Fast forward to now, and I'm very interested in the history. I think you're right about the sort of just like there's so many things going on in this, and there's so many cultures that approach the Enlightenment with the West not even approaching it, except in Orthodox. In Orthodox, I do think there is a space for enlightenment. I think it's called theosis or something like that. But
Mm,
that's a tangent. So the Tang
mm,
Dynasty recognized Buddhism as a threat to Confucianism, and
yes.
they started going after the monasteries as the Tang Dynasty, which was a golden age, started to descend. And in that research, I found out that there are a whole bunch of ways that enlightenment is verified by traditions.
Hmm.
Uh, and like, what's your take on that verification of enlightenment? Can you verify it?
Yes. And most people will fail it. And so
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's very
they change
rare.
from my
Yeah.
perspective because there's I think Buddhist Geek uh, podcast and article about it. And, just like your mentor or advisor,
Mm.
the, there was a meeting or dinner with all these people. And he's like, yeah, I'm with all these people. And then they're pop opening a bottle of wine to drink with all these people who are self-claimed enlightened, right? From a Theravada perspective, you wouldn't even be first stage. Forget the full enlightenment unless you're actually adhering to the five precepts, which
Mm.
the one includes no drinking, no alcohol.
Mm. And what about
Which
sex? Or
uh,
is yeah.
no, the third one just says no sexual misconduct.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's, what does that mean? You can splice hairs in terms of premarital or whatever, but generally, I think it was more be like, have you done something that has guilty conscience on your mind?
Interesting. I like
That's
that.
like easiest way to do it. Like people say, oh, what would if I use pesticides or, like, oh, should I be vegetarian? It's like, well, are you going out and hunting and killing? If not, then no, because intentionality, both you and I live in such a technical world that we don't think
Yeah,
about, right?
yeah.
So it's not something that has a cognitive load on us. So for me, I don't think that's a hard precept. So that's if you talk about historically, there's no debate about it. That's the definition that the Orthodox, early Buddhists, the
Mm,
Theravada still use. Other
mm,
traditions would quibble on that, but
mm,
for me, it's already like very thing. I think the other thing that I tend to use is whether or not people have overcome their hell rebirth.
Ooh, interesting. What is that?
Well, because based on the cosmology, right? the definition of the first stage is you will never fall to hell again.
Ooh.
That means you must have repaid your hell. And as far as I can tell, based on empirical data, you have to go through hell at some point in your
Mm,
life. Whether we can call it a dark night of the soul, whatever, right? It is that a lot of people sort of glorify it, but generally it's about going through hell. But it's not just going through hell. It's have you actually taken away all karmic potentiality for rebirth in hell and
mm,
have verify in your mind conscious stream. So the five precepts are just like a proxy towards it because those are the acts and the things that will probably tend to make you rebirth in hell. So if you're over it and moreover you repaid it, then by definition you will not be reborn again, and then you can only go from human to heaven or Brahma realm.
mm.
Only upward trajectory, like if we're using more technical terms, right? No more. The only problem with the infinite loop and infinite thing is you have a possibility to go down, but the infinite becomes finite when it's only upward and you eliminate the bottom. So it's a probability theory for me. So most Buddhists don't think of it that way. They're like, well, I had this
Mm.
experience or thing, therefore in 2006 I was enlightened. Well,
Yeah,
are you actually a better person in everyday life?
yeah.
Like in terms of what we secular people might call it or whatever. And then checking yourself against these requirements. And if not, then maybe your thing is not quite enlightened. It's just a peak experience.
Mm. And it could be a very long peak experience. What I love about what you just said, it gets to a certain subtlety that, like, it's almost infinite subtlety, right? Because it's like what you said about going through hell. It's like because it's not just this lifetime, right? It's
Mm.
the subtle impressions of previous lifetimes that could turn into a seed of hell in the
Yeah,
future, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
So,
that feels like a much more stringent requirement. This is the the craziest thing about the current internet fueled all this stuff. I like these Facebook groups. So this goes back to the AI part. The Facebook has improved their algorithm.
mm,
So their algorithm has now been improved by the LLMs. I can tell because it's delivering me exactly the stuff I want to go down on rabbit holes. Either whether it's like Nisargata Maharaj, like the non-duality, the those groups. And so it led me to another non-duality group, and in that one it gets kind of funny. They're all using AI pictures. They're all using AI to share their words and the LLMs and stuff. And one, a lot of people are claiming enlightenment. And it's just so interesting going back to that verification of enlightenment. But we could also talk about AI psychosis as well, because that has it. ChatGPT changed their algorithm so that AI psychosis is no longer as common, because there was some games that were on Reddit. There were like sort of games that people would play where they'd pretend to be a spy, and that got into the training data for ChatGPT, and so people were kind of going down these pathways of AI psychosis. I suspect that ChatGPT knew it and they kept it there because it definitely increased the engagement loop for
mm,
these people going into psychosis. They got stopped because they decided, like, or they got a lot of public attention on it, so that went away. But there is this thing hanging around, which is the same thing I got into before I finally found that guy who claimed enlightenment and found authentic teachers, I believe. That of the sort of Gnostic delusion, yeah, Gnostic delusion.
mm,
We could go into the Christianity part too, because Christianity is so interesting because they have this apostolic succession. So, and I think there's a good reason for it. I think in the West, there was a really strong foundation and tradition that eventually led to the scientific method and
yeah.
science that was based on this apostolic and Jesus's words, like by the fruits you should know them. And I'm oversimplifying, but I think that is important. This succession from Jesus and Peter and all the way down to the Pope. But there is also this kind of just chauvinism and inability to accept things like something like enlightenment. And for some reason, the Orthodox didn't get into there as well. But I just threw a lot at you. I'm not sure exactly what it was. Yeah, what do you think?
I'm familiar with it. There's problems with every system, right?
Yeah.
There's a
Mm-hmm.
problem with the niche system.
Yep.
There's a problem with too much tradition. There's a problem with too much
Yeah.
progress,
Yeah.
right? It's like in Goenka tradition, right? If I'm gonna go back to one, nobody's enlightened, right?
Oh,
So,
interesting. Wait.
so
Yeah.
in a sense, right? Like as far as we know, nobody publicly claim it, and we think it's so hard,
Oh.
everything. So then I know some personal friends who are in tech, like Indians, who've left because of that. They're like, well, then it's not working.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
And then they go and find it, and then came to the other one that I just mentioned, where everybody's enlightened. They're like, and then they couldn't do it. So then
Yeah.
they're like, wait,
Yeah.
something wrong with me? Like either so that's it's a really interesting data point for me, and I have my own pet theories about it. But so what we can do is we can probably invalidate both of those extremes.
Yep.
Enlightenment should be at least systematically and progressively doable, because it doesn't have to be this big bang kind of
Mm.
awesome, right? Like, are you becoming a better person? Like, it's a very simple definition, right? A better version of yourself based on your definition, not anybody else, whatever. Like, are you proud of who you're becoming? How you showing up in the world, regardless, right? And I try to do that even at work these days, and people notice. And I'm not claiming to be enlightened at all, but I do think that after 20 years of meditation, this version of Kelvin is
Yeah.
much better version of Kelvin. And being an engineer or whatever, if it wasn't, then I'm wasting my time. And why the hell would I do that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm obviously not at the end of my thing. Otherwise, I would stop practicing, right? But I'm still practicing. So I obviously think I have a lot more to work on. So that's another problem that I see. People say, I'm enlightened. Oh, it's terminal. But then you're like, you're probably a bigger asshole now. So
Yeah.
they stop practicing and they start teaching. And then we can go into monetary and business model
Mm.
problems. Like we can think of it that way, right? Catholic Church, like if you're beholden to your followers and stuff like that, your audience, the kind of thing that you're going to do, say. So I think all of that get meshed into that human nature, our dynamic economics. So yeah, I do think it should be possible. And I do think our Buddhist prophecy of this 500
Change.
years, let's say the enlightenment is possible again. Before this era, maybe one in few, some people win lottery.
Very interesting.
So the timing is there. And like if we're always going back to that. So I'm not the one making it up. The Pasana and the whole Goenka tradition is based on this 500-year prophecy that is enlightenment is possible again. Yet at the same time, almost nobody there make it. So there is also something a little bit off about it.
Mm. So the 500-year prophecy Goenka, that feels like, so it's Myanmar. I did a lot of research. I think it was before our last podcast where tried to go into the Goenka tradition and where did it start. And it is like an older tradition, right? Or did Goenka start it? Or like,
No,
but
it's a pretty much old tradition. But he
yeah,
popularized it. He more made it more digestible for or Western audience, right? That was
yes,
actually part of the split that he had with the Burmese lineage part. They thought they should keep it traditional,
esoteric.
and you know, generally you can't do anything big if you just try to make it so traditional that
Yeah.
you exclude everybody out.
Yeah. So in this 500-year prophecy, what about it? Or when did it happen? When is the timeline for the 500 years beginning or ending?
We're about 60 years in, I think,
Hmm.
50, 60 years in. I forget. If you look at the Buddhist calendar year, that will tell you. It's
What what is the Buddhist calendar?
y- the Thai and the Burmese keep a Buddhist calendar, so it will tell you the Buddhist calendar year. And the 500 year started at 2500. So
Wow.
we're at
Okay.
the 2558, then we're basically 58 years into 500, whatever the next phase is. So we're kind of
And
like in startup phase of Buddhism revival in a way.
and we're gonna get to the AI stuff because that's really interesting. But the 500 years. So the Buddhist and Thais have their own astrology, right? And is it separate from Indian astrology?
No, it's basically copied and
Yeah. Okay.
translocated from Indian
Yeah.
Vedic astrology.
Interesting. Okay.
And so that's why some of the actual timing is off. In Burmese calendar, actually, they're off on full
Mm-hmm.
moons and new moons by a day. And they think they're
Mm.
accurate, but they applied the uh, wrong
Astronomically.
factor from India because we're not in India. So.
Oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. So it's just like a small diversion in where the observer
Yeah.
was.
And it's off by a day. And you're like, well, the moon is there. I can tell you what NASA says. You're off by a day.
Which is that's the craziest thing I think in general is just the astrology and astronomy in the West were the same thing. They were the same exact thing until Copernicus, Kepler, and Brahe,
Yeah.
Tycho Brahe, and then they started to diverge with the calculations. And in a lot of ways, the Western astrology then has come back and like accepted those like where the stars are actually. I believe I haven't fact checked, but I'm pretty sure that they do actually track where the stars are according to Western scientific
Yeah.
understandings of
Tropical
everything.
astrology does that. Yeah. But then
Yeah. Okay.
it's more like seasonal thing. So whereas the Vedic one is more like one
Oh,
is
interesting.
spatial, the other one is temporal, essentially, even though both of them are timing techniques.
Oh, interesting. Okay, let's get into the AI because that is a thing that is so relevant. Um,
I mean, it's all
now,
part of it.
now,
So for
now,
me, the
now,
revival
now,
things,
now, now.
oh, the feedback. Yeah, the Buddhism revival and everything, AI and all this stuff happening in the secular world is part of it.
Mm,
Otherwise, like the internet, for example, I think it's what led to the spread of Goenga tradition and international travel. So without those means, you wouldn't have that. So AI and everything, it's all part of the recipe in the milieu. Whether it's pro or con, it doesn't matter. That's sort of
mm.
will be the driving force of it, right? So just so that the transition is well understood by the audience that for me, it's not like things happen in isolation or independent. It's because of the internet and because of the AI coming that all of this thing will be more and more relevant. Before, like people will say, "Oh, I don't know what you mean by Maya and the world's illusion." Well, now with
Now
the
you do.
now
Yeah,
it's like, well, in your face, and now you know
yeah,
what we mean. Like,
yeah,
does it mean nothing is real? No, it also doesn't mean that because then you can go crazy. But
yeah.
it also means that actually almost everything is generated. Then what does that mean? So like these concepts I was like probability theory, like the vocabulary I'm using is so hard 2,500 years ago to explain, but now it's trivial.
Because of probability theory. This is great because it goes into a podcast I did yesterday about how we got determinism and we got probability, and all the people who are used to determinism who actually created the probability framework. And by the probability framework, I'm talking about LLMs, their predictive
Oh,
nature.
mm,
And so the determinism, all these guys who are used to this determinism, like Andrej Karpathy, who 4 months ago went on a podcast with Dwarkesh and said, all this is bunk. I don't trust LLMs. And then only like 5 days ago, he starts tweeting like, "Oh, I'm really behind. Like I'm not at the cutting edge anymore of these
mm.
tools because of my suspicion." This goes into what you were talking about earlier, is that it's hard to like. He's obviously knows a lot about software and will have no problem catching up, but anybody outside of it may have a
That's
difficulty catching
Andrew
up.
Carr, right? The guy who
Yep.
coined vibe coding
Yep.
and everything, right?
Yep.
So that's what I mean. That's the pace
Mm-hmm.
of progress and that's the pace of innovation. And if you're not building and if you're just a casual user, that's fine. Then you're never going to be, like that
Mm-hmm.
level. So to think that you somehow meditation is going to allow you to do that, I think it's they're going to miss the boat basically.
That's
And they don't
really
want to be
interesting.
in the boat. They don't want to be in the boat because they're like, I'm somehow above it, like non-dual or whatever. I don't want to be in there. Like, but if if you don't build it, nobody's going to use it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's almost like knowledge, and it goes back to the singularity theory, because I believe what the singularity theory says is that if you're not inside of it, it's really hard to catch up. But it's just knowledge, right? Like it's just knowledge. But at some point, then there's like a divergence going back to that polymath discussion. Then it's a divergence among like there's going to be a point at which I feel like I'm pretty well caught up. I feel like what
Yeah,
Andre Karpathy feels like he lacks, I do not lack that. I lack his software ability, which definitely stops
yeah.
me from building good software, but I don't lack the ability to know these tools and use them. At some point, there's going to be a differentiation in what I can focus within that, basically, right? So there'll be multiple singularities, right?
Multiple threads, let's say, that's driving the
I like that.
spiral singularity, I would say,
Yeah.
right? Multiple currents, like things like that. Because yeah, because I think all the things and tinkering you're doing, it's at the consumer level. That's what I
Mm,
about it when I see all your LinkedIn posts and everything. You can do like it's like an app level kind of thing, not to denigrate it, but
Interesting.
that's the
Yeah.
level, right? Are you ever going to build the enterprise software? No. But a few of my friends are working on enterprise software and making those tools. Then Andre is right. Is it ready for prime time? No. But if they don't work on it, how are we going to get there? So, that's how Silicon Valley and the investing in some of the people are thinking is like, I'm going to put in this cost, get the experience. So then when it is prime time, I will be the most experienced with the tool to build that whole enterprise software suite and things like that. Because the
Interesting.
trend is very clear that I heard that even Sequoia, whatever, if you just sort like the top most worth tech companies or whatever that AI and this sort of automation can disrupt, that basically will inform their investment thesis, right? That you can just say, yeah, it's 10x the cost reduction or the speed or whatever you can apply the AI tooling for. And then that's how you're gonna go and try to capture that business. I mean, that's how they think about it. I
I don't.
think
I didn't understand. What do you mean? What do you mean? The disruption. What did you
like
mean by
a
that?
Uber, right? Uber
Mm,
disrupted tech, right?
yep.
Before Uber came out, nobody really had an investment thesis, right? But now you can have a very easy investment thesis, say, just sort by the worth in the company in terms of enterprise or software companies. And then you can say, what should I build? I was like, oh, I should build like Salesforce. I should build like PeopleSoft or Oracle or whatever,
within the
Microsoft.
new within the new framework of LLMs,
Yeah,
basically of the software that opens up, which will disrupt some of the major players, basically.
all of them, right?
Oh, interesting.
Disrupt all of them. And then you basically have an agile team with mostly AI agents and things. And then it's like, what should that do? Well, you already know because that's what those incumbents are doing. You just basically provide a
Yeah,
low,
got it, got it. Interesting.
like,
Uh, and the agent thing is really interesting because now I got a little taste of it in the last week or last month, basically about 3 weeks ago. Somebody showed us how to use anti-gravity, which
mm,
is the Google IDE that's competitive to Cursor. And
yeah,
anti-gravity is the first one with agent swarms baked into the UI. So you send out an agent. While you send that agent out to do things, the UI allows you to go check out the other agents. This is sort of against Claude Code, which Claude Code has background agents, but
mm,
you can kind of see where they're into it, but it's all in the terminal and like consumer driven. Like the talk about the consumer point, like no consumers are going to use Claude Code. Very, very few are going to use Claude Code because it's, but Google brilliantly came out and competed against Cursor, and I'm going to give up my Cursor subscription because I'm just going to use Google Anti Gravity because it has all of these things. And there's this agent swarm mentality. So the point, where do you think the business is going to go? And I would love to talk about where NVIDIA fits in this as well, because NVIDIA has this really interesting software, hardware matrix going on as well. So yeah, what do you think of all those things?
I think we're still waiting for that next revolution, like a compiler.
Mm. A compiler? What do you mean?
So what did the compiler do for us? We no longer code in, all the
Yeah,
old people in my generation, they say, oh, I did punch cards and so I'm
yeah,
sorry. Or, like,
yeah,
so, and then we had assembly language and then we had C and then we have object oriented programming, etc. Right? Abstraction level goes up.
yeah.
So what allowed that to do that? It's the compiler, right? So now I think in some ways, again, depends on what the business model. I think the fundament, like it's not sexy to build a compiler, but any
Mm,
of these things that we're doing doesn't work without a compiler. So I think with the AI, the agents and everything, you know, why
mm,
should we be working so hard to make the AI code gen as what the human output is in some ways, right? Because, and we have precedents on this, computer architecture, right? We do out of order execution. You think you put it in the sequence that you did it in, but the CPU
whoa.
doing whatever it does, and then it just put it back. It's like hallucination, right? Except it's
Yeah.
a controlled one, so that you get the illusion that it was executed in correct sequence of the code that you put in.
Oh
But
man.
execution it out of order, and they have this reorder buffer and things like that. So all of that has been happening. And then why do we write loops? Because it's easier for human to reason with loops and things like that. You know what's better for a computer, a CPU? Loop unrolled.
Mm,
Like, so you just do like
yeah.
10 instructions in each iteration. You do 30 of them in, just put it up in a big long thing that you will get an F for in a computer science class. That's what we do. And then that's what GPUs and NVIDIA and everything do essentially. You unroll it and then you put it to all these processing units, so that human level abstraction is actually what makes it worse performance wise. We only did it for humans because human cognitive ability needed that level of abstraction. So for me, that's where the true innovation will happen, where these agents will be basically writing in gibberish language. Like, have you ever seen like a JavaScript that's been like, I forgot the word, that's been like kind of squished to the lowest level where all the variables are like A, B, and then like,
No.
um, anyway, there's a technical name for it that I'm blanking on these days. But you can like basically make it so that and there's no space and everything. Like everything is like every character has been squished, but it's the same program. You can still read it, but it's a little bit harder. So it'll be an extreme version of it where it'll be some scribble that the LLM understand. The human go read it, go, I have no idea what the hell this doing. I can only look at the output of it. But we've been in this situation, right? Like I said, all the code is running machine code, and none of us understand really at this day.
Yeah.
But it execute because we have a compiler or some way of ensuring correctness of it from different levels.
So we need a compiler, and it's almost like a compiler at the linguistic level. I mean, in what ways is our tokens not already compiled? There's that question of like, so we're and now I'm starting to think about like a compiler, like it's almost like consciousness is a compiler in conversation, because we're having this conversation, but each word both of us have learned is like connected to our entire histories. But because we both speak the language, and we have
Um,
like there's something in our brain that is doing that, that is allowing us to have this conversation. And actually, sorry, I'm going to go off on a really random tangent, but there's also the talk of like sort of psychic phenomena, and I think about animals and how animals are basically psychic. Like
mm,
they can sense everything, and they don't have a linguistic thing to get in. So I don't want to
sure,
anthropomorphize and say anything like that. But
sure.
it seems pretty clear that they're really, really sensitive to things that are unsaid. And so I've
Yeah.
been thinking recently that maybe humans created language so that we could get our psychic intuitions without as many errors. And I wonder, like, what do you think about that? Like this idea that language could have been created to sort of um, uh, um, as a compiler on psychic phenomena. Also, I wonder of whether
So,
Buddhism has. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
what do you know about the Tower of Babel story?
Oh yes, yeah, interesting. Actually, I don't know it that well. There was a great book by Charles Eisenstein, which I should definitely go back and read, because he wrote it in like 2006. I read it in like 2013, where it's all about the Tower of Babel. Of course, I remember the story when I was growing up. I just remember everyone spoke the same language, and then it all collapsed basically, and that's how we got all of our different
Punishment
languages.
from God. So we
Oh
lost that.
yes, exactly. Because we were trying to build a tower to
Yeah,
God, and
it's
then
too
yeah,
much arrogance.
yeah,
But Sanskrit from India language for all these things supposed to be as close to that perfect language because it's
interesting.
tonal, it's frequency. And that's an academic opinion, not a spiritual opinion. Like it's as complete and as we have it, which is like a remnant of that
Hmm.
earlier one. So and I agree with you, like language and everything. Like, I wouldn't call animals psychic. I would just say they have other senses that we somehow devalue or squash based on this logical brain and being able
Hmm.
to put to a thing. And that's actually technically that's not a compiler. So in a Python, you have an
Hmm.
interpretive environment and shell that's continuously doing it. That's more what you're thinking about. Compiler is something you run offline. Like I I like a C program, right? You compile it and then you run it into a machine. You're not doing it interpretive or interactive shell.
Oh,
There's
interesting.
two types of programming language that are like that. Compiler is just more efficient version because you do it once, and the thing that it guarantees is whatever you wrote in one language, the behavior is preserved in a more efficient language. And it was there just so that we don't have to think in ones and zeros. We can think higher level abstraction. So
Okay.
interpreted languages and Pythons are always going to be slower because it's doing it kind of live and is not doing it. Anyway, so all these technologies and everything is needs to be there so that the agents and like I said, what we're kind of catering to humans in some ways too much. Right? All the programming
Hmm.
language created for human programmers. That's why even the more intellectual ones in Silicon Valley, like functional programming languages, as opposed to imperative programming languages. I don't know if you know the difference, but
Hmm.
generally, um, functional ones are more function and math based because they tend to think mathematically. But regardless, it's all the structure of the human brain does. And I think, and according to my friends, I think just like loop unrolling all these like when you're trying to do things in parallel and everything, all the sequential stuff, it's actually slowing you down. So you should probably just rethink that and take away that level, right? Of course, then you can't have human in the loop and it's more dangerous.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, it goes back to spirituality, right? Like more powerful something is, it's going to be more dangerous. And it's probably there as like the hell realm or the thing. It's both a challenge and an opportunity, right?
Because
And
you
you
got to go no matter what.
yeah, and only through the crucible you come out the other way. You
Yeah,
know,
interesting.
you can sink or swim kind of thing. So, and people think, oh, can we save it? As far as I can see, we can't avoid it. And so, I think AI and all this issues and everything is we're in the crucible now.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Essentially,
It's gonna increase the chaos is gonna increase
yeah.
as it
Oh,
because it is the hell. Like particularly, it feels like because there's other frameworks that talk about the era that we're in. One of which seems really accurate as well, which is the fourth turning.
oh yeah.
Yeah, and it feels like we're about halfway through. I was talking with a friend the other day, and he was like, there are five characteristics that they predicted. Four of them have come true. This is just kind of like a conversation we were having. I didn't fact check it, but it's in my notes to fact check it. And he says four of them have come true. One has not, and that other one is sort of either like a civil war or cataclysmic war event, basically. But like
This is
basically,
US, right?
yeah,
The fourth turning
yeah,
book is the
yeah,
US
it's
one.
from academics in
Sure.
and it's so
I'm
funny. Yeah.
familiar with both books. I think the
Uh-huh.
fourth turning and then the latest one, only one of the authors wrote. I think it's
Oh, interesting.
turning is here or something like that.
Oh, interesting.
Again, when we talked about astrology and astronomy, for me, it's the same thing. Like, of course, if you look at patterns, there's going to be cycles and patterns
Yeah.
because it's cyclic, right? The government
Mm.
cycles. And I think that's probably the amnesia of the West. Their time horizon is not long enough. Like, same, go back to Enlightenment and everything. People take this blip of a experience or something and they, oh, and then they, overfit on it. If we're going to use AI terms on that, they overfit on that limited data that they have because they want it to be true. And doesn't it work for training data? Sure, of course it works for training data. You go out and then you do inference, and then they're like, "Oh no, no, that inference is wrong." It's like, no, I think that means you have overfit it.
Interesting. Well, that goes into a whole other place now, back into LLMs, which is Jan LeCun famously is pushing back hard on the AI bubble, where he's saying LLMs are a good piece, but they're not the whole piece. And
Mhm.
so then it leads us back to NVIDIA because it's the physical AI and the sort of like there's this idea that we need a world model for the robots. We haven't talked about robots. We could talk about
Yeah,
robots as well. But I would like to present my thesis so that you could help me refine it, which is basically, I think LLMs are really, really helpful for that language part that we were talking about as well.
yeah,
So it's like they're really for patterns, for language, for large documents that I can just sort of consume and figure out like the terms of service. Like it's perfect for terms of service or any sort of regulation. But I think Jan LeCun is right that the we need some sort of world model where the thing can actually reason around the world
mm,
physically, not only physically, but just like have a sense of where it is in space and time. And there's a great YouTube video from one of your former colleagues, I forget his name, but about physical AI. If anybody's curious, I can find
Fei
that.
Fei Li also is talking about that, right? Spatial
Who?
intelligence. Fei Li,
Oh, interesting. Okay, it wasn't Fei Fei Li, but that is
ImageNet creator Fei Li. She has a
yeah,
new stuff based on this world model, and it's actually using the more traditional computer vision kind of approaches or theory. Yeah,
interesting. And
and
so so that's the world model, the physical world. But I've been thinking more about ontologies as
mm,
this sort of like, because the LLMs are really crazy. They go all over the place and they hallucinate and get a lot of things wrong. But then
yeah.
there's this, like, it feels like there's an ontology or a knowledge graph or a way that like Yahoo and Amazon figured out in the 1980s and the 1990s that could come and help us. Do you think that that's part is accurate? I feel like I'm going crazy with the ontology because it's like incredibly manual work. Part of me likes that manual work of categorization and like knowledge management and stuff like that. But part of me thinks that I'm wasting all of my time and that there will be no reason for an ontology because the agents are just going to get better and better and better. And the whole reason that we have ontologies is going to get destroyed. What do you think about that?
I think you're right, actually. I think what LLM has solved is the UI issue. We no longer
Mm,
explain my intent to the LLM.
interesting.
Like the old assistants like Siri and whatever, Alexa of the thing, they were
Yeah.
not able to capture your intent, especially the context when it become more complex. Now we may say whatever we may about hallucination and everything, but isn't it a solved problem now? Whatever you intend, the model
Yep.
understood.
Yep.
Whether or not it actually did what you asked it to do or just working to please you, it understood it, right? So
Yep.
I think that's the problem. And I think almost anybody who's knee deep in it understands it now. It's a solved problem. But
Mm.
even that solved problem based on Asura or whatever spiritual thing that we may think about,
Oh,
it's a
interesting. Wait. Well,
it's a very badly solved problem, meaning we have exasperated all the world problems.
oh
Water,
God.
water,
Yeah. Oh,
power.
yeah. Interesting.
From an engineering perspective, we should all be ashamed of this
Oh, interesting.
one of the worst way to solve it, right? So,
Because it's the bitter lesson, because the bitter lesson is true.
yeah,
That Yeah, interesting.
right? So we can say both statements to be simultaneously true. It's now a solved problem, meaning now we have an oracle or something. Now we should actually probably go make it more engineering efficient and just, but the overreach that people have done is thinking that it can reason and it can do all this scheduling and all this other problems. Like coding is a very good
Yeah.
problem set because it's actually a very well bounded
Yeah.
problem. And we have
Yeah.
plenty of examples. Again, based on my earlier point, those are human readable examples.
Yeah.
So we
Interesting.
may be overfitting and solving a slightly wrong problem, but that's okay. Like we can engineer ourselves out of it. So I think ontology and things like that your intuition is telling you is we still have to know how to structure the world. And the
Okay.
LLM is not going to do that based on its fundamental architecture. Like,
Interesting.
right? It's breaking it down to tokens and its vector into the embedding space. It has no idea. What
Yeah.
is the
Interesting.
image? What is the letter? Like, why does if you ask other like graphics and text combined, like just make a simple flow chart, it has random like typos. And you're like, is it really stupid? And then
Yeah.
you realize, yeah, it is stupid because it's just focusing on the visual and then the text that you give it. You think, why can't it copy paste? Well, because we don't know how the token was fractured. You know what I mean? So, and to like all the researcher, Jan LeCun, or even people like Marcus, right? The critics, they're right.
Yeah.
Like, in it,
Interesting.
you're never gonna get more intelligent version out of this fundamental architecture. So we got to celebrate for what it solved, which is capturing UI, UX, right? But decision making, it's not going to do. If the problem is, it can do it well enough that you think it might work, but I think it's an asymptotic approach. Like it will because fundamentally the architecture is just not used to solve that, and we shouldn't put it all in that, right? Anyway, so
So,
that's why I feel like that's the sort of the Ashura weapon kind of thing. Where it's like make you think it's good enough. So you think that's the answer. Not like you're actually probably as far away from the real answer the more you walk because of the asymptotic approach, right? That's like a bitter, even a more bitter spiritual lesson. Like
Bitter,
even
the
you come
bitter,
close,
yeah.
but you're actually never gonna get there.
Yeah, the bitter lesson leads to the bitter spiritual lesson because the asuras are like, because the asura in the Buddhist cosmology is this sort of demon. Oh man, okay. So there's a demonesque quality to
Mhm.
this asura, yeah, and there because it's the Deva versus the asura, right? Can you explain what the cosmology says there?
They're just in a constant war, right? Constant
Mm.
battle for supremacy. It's kind of like the Greeks with the
Yeah,
old
Titans
ancient
and
gods,
interest.
Titans, and then the new, right? So the new and what are they all afraid of? Humans rising up and becoming gods, right? Now what are we afraid of? LLMs or robots become like
Yeah, God.
we're afraid of the next generation because we know our failings and we know that we can be like uh sort of the
Human
pun
nature.
and nuked easily, right? You're like, "Ah, it's not that
Yeah.
hard to topple us." But anyway, so they seed it, right? So it's powerful, like I said. It's powerful, but you look at all the things that's characteristic of that power. It's very wasteful. Everything
Yeah.
about it is
Interesting.
plus it's probably overloading human cognitive and attention and all the things that we talked about. Like it's if you think about disruption to the human mind, this is probably very disruptive, right? Like so if you can think of what is the best way to the mind virus, like LLM's probably it that's gonna like work well enough, but hallucinate and
Yeah, yeah. But
it
that's
could
beautiful. The thing I've been thinking about is that is actually very beautiful, right? Because the fact that these so previous to LLMs, we had no other linguistic beings that we could just talk with except for other human beings.
yep.
And since all the humans are in a similar form, we basically like that was the only option, so we didn't know any other options. Now
Uh-huh.
the LLM comes in and it hallucinates. Most people are like, "Oh, we can't trust it." It's like, yeah, but we can't trust humans either. Like because humans also hallucinate and they also make up stuff and there's differences, but the fundamental thing is the same, which is that you can't trust it, and that has made me more accurate and honest in my assessment of whether other people are lying to me or bullshitting or all these other things,
Sure.
because it allows for a third party to model that behavior. So
Yeah.
I guess but that's what we've been saying this entire time is just like good the simple good and bad are not what we're after here, because we're on a longer time horizon and we have to go through hell no matter what. So it's like this is just part of evolution basically, and so these asuras and the
Maybe.
devils are
Yeah.
helpful.
Oh, and more succinctly, we're
Mm.
humanity is the frontier and the battleground.
Interesting.
Christianity, where we're literally fighting for the soul here, right? And
Interesting.
the weapons are going to be similar in a sense. You can't differentiate. If it was easy to differentiate, what one side would have won. Like they're kind of like equal in this. In fact, the Titans are actually more powerful because they're more raw in the, the whatever. So that general dichotomy is there. Like one is more raw, the other one is more refined, more intelligent, kind of thing.
Mm.
So yeah, LLM, all of this, it's here. Like, and both sides probably put it in a sense because this is just a choice of weapon. Like, or we can even say AI. Like, if we don't want to make it so about LLM, so AI and this evolution of humanity and where they're going, right? So that's the battleground. That's why I was telling you offline about 2029. I think that's what's going to come to a head. Like, essentially,
Mm.
enough things are
Mm.
going to break. Then and people either will rise above it or be used by it, whichever way it's going to be. So the timing is there. So we have some time, but it's also
Mm.
not so far away. you
Yeah.
know, 2012, right? Or I was even thinking about giving you examples, right? Like in my younger days, we had the Y2K bug, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And why do we have that Y2K bug? Because technically there's only 8 bits. So you can only encode 2 bits and then you don't encode 1900. You encode, 75, 78. But
Interesting. I never knew that. Interesting.
so again, I want to sort of s- give like specifics of why that is, right?
Yeah.
It was we're not
Yeah.
dumb. The
Yeah.
memory and those were expensive, so they use 8 bits. And then 2000, and then now you have to represent 4 digits. Well, you need a little bit more than 8 bits, right? Like that's technical, technical reason.
Mm,
16 bits integer, 32-bit integer. Well, why does it matter? Like we're living in a world of abundance now, so people don't cringe at it, right? Like for me, when you do a string comparison of an integer, I cringe at it because you realize the load on the CPU that you don't need to. Anyway, so all of those reasons are there for Y2K. And then we had spiritual thing like 2012, December 2012, right? Mayan calendar, all that, right? And then people transition to like December 2020, like, oh, the Great Conjunction, all this.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you gotta always, or even we had like 2000 internet bubble, right? Same thing with AI bubble and everything. Like everything is going to be similar patterns, right? The hype is probably ahead. And all I'm trying to say is timeline wise, you kind of see, okay, all of this takes time, right? In 2012, if you say, where's this revolution? Where's AI? Yeah, you'd be crazy, right? But then
Mm,
now we're here. It's like a fact of life. Like it's not going to go away. They're here to stay because they've
yeah.
this the UI UX problem.
So, last sort of few minutes, one question I think would be really helpful for the audience as well, given your side hustle or side gig, or I don't mean to say that, but like how
Yeah,
you
sure.
help people is basically the so without being a luddite,
Mm,
how does one balance what you said? Because and this relates to another question I wanted to ask, which is about persuasion. So
mm,
recently, OpenAI has said that they will only release their best technology if a near competitor releases something that's also dangerous under this sort of AI safety thing.
mm, mm.
And so they have better technology right now. But they don't want to release it because of safety. And I'm sure Claude says the same thing. I kind of wonder whether it's marketing or not. But
Sure.
they say this because of AI safety. So if it's true, and the AI safety thing I'm sort of like skeptical on, except when it comes to persuasion. And the first thing I heard, I was like, no, persuasion, just let it rip. Who cares? Like the persuasion's fine. Like I'm not persuaded by this thing. But now I wonder, well, like maybe I am persuaded by this thing, by the LLM just doing things. What do you think? Do you think LLMs are capable of persuasion? It feels like they would need that reasoning to become the sort of like manipulator, right?
No,
No?
even slightly misinformation is good enough, right?
Yeah.
Like at this point, I feel, I mean, let's just use you as an example. And
Yeah.
based on what my outside observation of
Sure, sure.
LinkedIn, stuff like that, right? Like you don't Google anymore. You don't look it
Mm.
up. You don't look at the NASA. I know that we were talking about April 2029. You just ask Claude and then you trust it, right? And
Yeah.
based on what it says, it's good. And then it gave links to the NASA and references that it looked, right? Did you look at those references? Probably not.
No.
I'm guessing, right? So that's the level of persuasion that you're already under. I mean, like I said,
But
I'm
no, and no, and I hear that. But the system I'm building is going to lead to plugging in to formal ontologies because I've been aware of this
no, no,
problem for a really long time. Yeah.
this is not meant as
Yeah.
a
Okay.
criticism. All
Yeah.
I'm saying is more like take you as the
Yeah.
forefront asking me this question,
Yeah.
and you are already under that. And then you take the curve of humanity.
Yeah. Oh.
How
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
other
Got it.
people are just gonna trust whatever the output of it? So
Yeah. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me, it's actually even more dangerous because it doesn't have reasoning.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Because if it
Uh,
had
be,
reasoning, maybe it will think, maybe should I say it or not? Now it's just like gonna spew out whatever,
yeah.
and
Interesting.
that's actually more dangerous. Like half truths are sometimes more dangerous than like,
Ooh.
based on psychedelics or other things that maybe we've
Yeah.
talked
Yeah.
about, not
Yeah.
here, but
Yeah. Yeah.
before. It's
Yeah.
like people are like, just tell me the truth. But
Yeah.
now I'm of the opinion most people are not ready for the truth. Do they really want disclosure? I don't think so. Is your brain and the mentality and your mind stable enough? Like the hell realm I talked about, right? A lot of meditators fracture under that weight of it, right? And these are people
Yeah.
who take it seriously, right? And so I'm actually very well, I was thinking about, so you were talking about lead eye, and so I
Mm,
personally actually have stopped trying to grow my stuff because
mm.
it's that most people can't keep up with everyday practice or yearly retreats. People don't prioritize it properly or not ready. So there's that. People are just not ready. I would say. But the other is like internet and everything, we know the dangers. People talk about the dangers. We even know, let's say I know the LLM and everything is Asura, whatever. Do
Yeah.
we have a choice to not use it? No, I don't
Yeah.
think we have a choice.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But the only thing I would say here is, and this is what you're doing, right? Based on
Mm,
you recognize there's a gap, like ontology, or
mm,
and then
mm,
use the tool to fix that. And I think that's the only way forward. Like like attention training, and I'm talking about like people don't seem to understand that they need to train their mind to be ready for this new age. And people are like, oh, I'm going to use the tools, but are you a user or a creator or a builder? Like those are very different roles, right? Most people are going to be user.
yeah. Interesting.
So what you're asked is more like, can the user be persuaded? I would say, hell yes, 100%. And then you're like, oh, is it a new problem? No, people have been persuaded by the
Yeah.
universal forces long, long ago.
Oof. Man, that
So
gets into it. Yeah. Go for it. Go for it.
no, I mean, it's for me, it's a pre-existing problem. The
Yeah.
nice thing about it, somebody said that with the world conflict before. It's like, at least you'll see there's no longer a facade,
Yep.
like some of these things. So same thing with hallucination and
Yep.
psychosis and stuff like that, right? Our brain is hallucinating. So some of these hard to explain spiritual stuff, it's going to come to a head. And I think we have no choice but to use technology to get over the next level. I think going back to the Stone Ages is not the answer. I don't know if I told you about my zombie apocalypse joke.
No.
Like, um, it's not a joke, but it's more like, again, self awareness and kind of thing. Like, if the zombie apocalypse comes, like, would I build bunkers and like pilots in New Zealand and all that? No, because I'm not competitive in that world. I'm a engineer. you know,
Yeah. Interesting.
not, so I will first volunteer or kill myself to be eaten first because that's the
Yeah.
least amount of pain.
Oh,
Because in the
interesting.
world, there's no way I'm competitive. Where is the world I am competitive? Where all of this neuroscience, AI, all the spirituality, all of that's going to come to a head with universal considerations. That's the world I'm competitive. So if I'm wrong about my future competition, I'd rather just die early, right? But if I'm right, then I will set up myself with all my background into that future. And so I have to bet on it. And because of the
Yeah.
Buddhist
Interesting.
prophecy and things like, I'm betting on a particular outcome of
Mm,
Sure. And that allows me to basically not waste my time on, oh, what if the humanity is destroyed with civil war or US is destroyed with civil war? Yeah, we've been in war. Like, what's the
mm,
destruction? I don't know. Like, COVID seemed like it should have been destructive, but it still wasn't enough to wake people up per se. But you know what I mean? Like, so I I'm willing to let that play out. However, it's gonna
mm,
bet on is, what is the world did I think I was created for this lifetime, and where I'm going to be the most competitive. So, for you, I would just say like based on your father, your background, all the things you're talking about, ontology, right? Like, dude, even if you're wrong, that's sort
mm.
of your solution, right?
I love this because it goes back to the whole thing, and it almost feels like Buddhism should have a take on the simulation theory, because Christianity has a take on the simulation theory, right? Like
Mm,
like and the simulation theory is a secular version of
yes, of course.
many religious traditions. Well,
Yeah,
the last question: what do you think would be the Buddhist take on simulate, or what would be the Buddhist simulation theory?
it'd be like,
The
well, we've been
cosmology.
talking.
Yeah, it's the
Now
cosmology. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you just finally understood it, and you're only
yeah.
talking about like a couple of layers of simulation, and we have 31 of them. So
31 layers of simulation. Okay, I like that one.
you talk
Yeah.
about creators of simulation, right? That's the sixth heaven level. And then the people who manipulates other creation for fun and shit
Uh-huh.
and giggle, it's the
Yeah.
seventh heaven. And
Yeah.
then there's other Brahmas or people who create even more astounding things. They're like, yeah, like, and then people are like, oh, I got to break out of simulations. Like, what do you think our third noble truth from Buddhism is?
What is the third noble truth?
There is an escape.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
If we weren't a
Awesome.
simulation, why would we need to escape?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
It's
Well, cool.
yep.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. And how can our listeners find out more about you?
I think my main website is alin.ai, alin.ai. That's my contribution to the world that I don't know people will value, but I think that's what kids and people should train their attention, especially
Mm.
using math and other things, so that they can actually, uh, not just survive this next phase that's coming, but actually use it to elevate themselves, because that's the next big window of opportunity, I think, in our lifetime.
Mm. Thank you.
Yep.